When you hear the name Mike Awesome, what sort of visuals spring to mind? Hmm?
It's just a warm-up for my big match Monday because I do have a title shot. So, Scott, I'm all over you tonight.
Hey, let's do it for the content. Megaran, let's go. Let's get it. Dick Kick City. It gets gritty when Megaran come through. The kid gets busy. Work yourself into a shoot, but you know it's legit. Like what you like, just don't be a dick. Hey, wrestling with regret. Let's get it. Yeah. What's that set? Maybe you should bottle it. Drink it and spray it on. Get Claude to model it. 8 years in, can't look back. Who else can make velour sweatsuits look whack? Wrestling with regret. Let's get it. Yeah.
Make no mistake, Mike Awesome was one of the best big men to ever step foot into a ring. Not only was he built like a brick shithouse, he was also stupid agile for his size, allowing for some mind-melting moments in Japan and in ECW, where he'd eventually become their all-destructive world champion. The man once known as the Gladiator was a whirling tornado of powerbombs, shattered tables, and unguarded chair shots to the head, the epitome of rage and violence in professional wrestling. And then WCW happened.
I knew this was just too sweet of an opportunity to pass up.
Was it, Mike? Was it really? If you want just one example of the failures of WCW in the year 2000, their handling of Mike Awesome ranks pretty high up there as one of the biggest. An exciting debut embroiled in controversy turned into 11 months of head-scratching booking decisions and laughably bad gimmicks. Was it bad luck, sabotage, or a combination of the two? Let's find out as we explore the WCW career of Mike Awesome. First, we turn the clock back to September of 1999, where Awesome has just come back from tearing his ACL 1 year earlier. At the Anarchy Rules pay-per-view, he returned as a surprise participant in a three-way dance against Taz and longtime rival Masato Tanaka for the world title. 14 minutes later, Awesome vanquished both his foes to reach the top of the mountain in the Land of Extreme, despite never being advertised for the show. Awesome and Tanaka traded the title a couple of times in some brutal affairs, but in April of 2000, the wrestling landscape was rocked forever. It all began when Paul Heyman allegedly fell behind on payments to Awesome. Now, most people know that ECW and bounced checks go together like beans and cornbread or hot dogs and handshakes, but when your world champion complains the money's not coming through, maybe it's time to admit there's a problem. I guess the prestige of working for Paul Heyman in ECW's dying days wasn't enough to keep Mike aboard the ship, so Awesome accepted a last-minute offer from WCW to appear on the reboot episode of Monday Nitro on April 10th. As somebody who watched this episode live as it was happening, by which I mean I frantically went back between this and Raw at the same time, there are moments from this first Nitro under the Russo-Bischoff regime that will stay with me. All those belts being vacated, the formation of the new blood, and this moment here, Mike Awesome, the current ECW champion, jumping Kevin Nash from behind. Now this was shocking. This was a huge deal. In early 2000, ECW pay-per-views were actually outselling WCW ones. House show numbers were better on average too. Now here was the world champion invading and jumping ship on live television. What a moment. Oh God, they're gonna let him talk.
When I heard Bischoff and Russo we're back in the saddle here at WCW. I knew this was just too sweet of an opportunity to pass up.
I'd even go so far as to argue the moment could have rivaled that of Lex Luger's surprise appearance in the very first Nitro in '95 until he opened his mouth. Anyway, ECW originally filed an injunction to prevent Awesome from appearing that night. A settlement was reached and WCW paid a low six figures to let the champ out of his contract, provided he didn't pull a Medusa and dump the ECW title on live TV, and they had to plug his upcoming title defense. All that chaos led to a huge piece of wrestling history just 3 days later in Indianapolis, when Taz himself made a shocking return to beat Awesome in 90 seconds to become the ECW champion once again. It was, say it with me everyone,
the only time in wrestling history
that a WWF contracted wrestler
fought a WCW contracted wrestler
in an ECW ring.
This, by the way, led to that time on SmackDown 1 week later where Taz wrestled Triple H in a champion versus champion match and lose in pretty unspectacular fashion in around 6 minutes. That means Awesome's sudden defection screwed ECW over in 2 ways. With all that taken care of, Awesome's next appearance was that Sunday at Spring Stampede. WCW capitalized on all the attention they made for themselves by putting Awesome in the tournament for the vacant US title, then having him lose in about 3 minutes to Scott Steiner in the second round. Okay? That's one way to use him, I guess. I mean, you spent all this money to bring him in. You paid ECW more money on top of that just to do it in the first place, only to bring him out and have him lose in less time to Steiner than it took him to beat Ernest Miller in the previous round. Sure, guys, it's your money. He managed to recover fairly quickly from the loss, though, becoming a giant weapon of destruction backstage and helping out Billy Kidman in his inexplicable feud against Hulk Hogan. It wasn't a terrible place for him to land. Not only was he in the thick of the new blood angle against one of the top guys in the company, he also had guys like Kidman or Eric Bischoff to do his talking for him.
And what is this man, Mike Awesome, doing here?
It's real simple. See if you can follow me.
It was kind of shocking to see Hogan actually get put through a table, 2 weeks in a row even. On the same night of the second attack, the Hulkster was seemingly well enough to have a whole match against Awesome in the main event, ultimately to be done in with help from Kidman in a steel chair. Hogan even got color in his loss to Awesome, made somewhat less effective after being doused with the New Blood's fake blood. Awesome fought Kanyon to a no contest at Slamboree, but they also made their presence felt in the main event, that ridiculous triple-decker cage match involving world champion David Arquette. After the match had ended, Mike jumped Kanyon, who had also made it to the cage by that point, then threw him several feet off the structure and onto the ramp below. Now, in a bubble, there might not have been anything inherently wrong with the stunt. After all, Mick Foley did something very similar 2 years earlier and got famous for it. But what makes this especially hard to watch is the time and the place. Slamboree took place nearly 1 year to the day of the death of Owen Hart, in the very same building where he had his fatal fall. What the fuck, guys? Nevertheless, Awesome leaned into the controversy to become the career killer and began wrestling almost exclusively in ambulance matches. Awesome wrestled in 5 such matches during the month of May against guys like Sting, G.I. Bro, Scott Steiner, and Kevin Nash, losing 3 of them. Hold up, what? You're gonna give a guy a signature match and not even have him win more than like, I don't know, 2 in a row before he begins losing? It's not that complicated, guys! It all led to another ambulance match against DDP at the Great American Bash, which ended when Kanyon, wearing a neck halo from his fall, turned on Page and cost him the match. Apparently, Kanyon was just acting horribly injured the whole time just to get to DDP. I mean, it's a little bit overkill, but if you're gonna try and lower a friend's defenses to eventually betray him, then I guess faking a near-death experience isn't the worst way to do it? But it's not as if the big swerve meant anything by the end of the night. The main event saw some guy named Goldberg also turn heel for the first and only time in his career. Hindsight notwithstanding, that heel turn sure overshadowed the impact of the first one, didn't it? At least it gave us positively Kanyon. Awesome then moved on to a US title feud with Scott Steiner, the man who won that tournament back in April, and perhaps one of the only guys in WCW crazy enough to take some of Mike's bigger moves. They were actually having a hell of a fight at Bash at the Beach until Commissioner Katz stopped the match and took the title away from Big Papa Pump for using the Steiner recliner, which he had deemed illegal. Which again, while crazy and nonsensical on its own, still wasn't the worst part about that show. WCW in 2000, y'all. You just had to be there. Mikey turned face, I guess, the next night on Nitro after refusing the Cat's offer to take the vacated title belt before going back to hit on female wrestler Mighty Heidi. The following week, Awesome lost to Lance Storm in a match to crown the new champion, so he probably should have taken the Cat up on his offer, but he didn't leave empty-handed.
These very large ladies are coming in consoling a fallen man. This is their champion, I guess.
Thus began Awesome's leap from career killer to fat chick thriller. He suddenly became a lover of the larger ladies. And let's get one thing straight, nothing wrong with that, but at this time in wrestling, if you were heavyset or someone you were paired with was, chances are you weren't meant to be taken seriously. Look no further than Ralphus, Jeff Jarrett's operatic Viking ladies, the lady from the Kiss My Ass match at SummerSlam 99, Uncle Elmer, Bastion Booger, Rhonda Singh in both the WWF and WCW, Judy Bagwell, and now this. Fat people, folks, aren't they just hilarious? Look at him! Awesome claimed in a 2003 interview that he believed he was saddled with this character because of his very tenuous familial connection to Hulk Hogan, who wasn't exactly in the best standing with Vince Russo at the time.
And Hogan, you big bald son of a bitch,
Kiss my ass!
And while it's a plausible enough theory, I feel we're giving Russo a bit too much credit here. Were Kwee-Wee, the artist, or G.I. Bro related to the Hulkster too? Maybe, just maybe, it was simply a shit idea. Awesome's feud with Storm went on for several weeks, building up to a title match at New Blood Rising in Vancouver, British Columbia. Storm, whose entire gimmick was that he was from Canada, was treated like a king at the show despite being a total heel everywhere else. He got the security detail, the Canadian national anthem uninterrupted, Jacques Rougeau as a special guest enforcer. What more could you ask for? Despite the very heelish storytelling in favor of Storm, he and Rougeau were cheered for everything they did to screw over Awesome. A lovely bit of booking schadenfreude if ever there was one. Mike kept losing to Storm in matches over the US gold, and by September, his comedic infatuation with large women was soon replaced with a less offensive, though equally useless idea in that 70s guy, Mike Awesome. Yes, for no discernible reason, the poor bastard now wore leisure suits and busted out goofy, outdated phrases. There's a guy overflowing with legitimacy. The character had a lot of extra time to shine on Thunder every week with the premiere of Mike's interview segment, The Lava Lamp Lounge. That's right, they gave the guy who can't talk a segment that's all about talking.
So there's enough vitamin A to go around for everyone. And that A stands for awesome. Everybody's favorite interviewer, Paula Pamshock. Are you from Tennessee? Because you're definitely the only 10 I see.
As you might have figured out by now in this video, to say that Awesome's mic skills weren't very groovy is a huge understatement. No disrespect, but his lack of promo abilities was arguably his biggest weakness. So hey, why not let him host his own talk show? Makes total sense, right? Oh, while we're at it, let's make Tank Abbott, I don't know, a backup dancer to a boy band or something. Oh. But Jeff Jarrett had no time for such silliness, crashing the party and trashing the set. This led to a bunkhouse match at Fall Brawl in Buffalo, New York, where Awesome arrived in the Partridge Family bus flanked by Different Strokes star Gary Coleman. Yeah, you know, Different Strokes, that classic show from the 1980s. Yeah.
This is one of my most favorite stars from the 70s right here.
Actually, that's the 80s, but I understand. No, I don't do that anymore.
Well, somebody's got to do it.
What you talking about?
Right.
Huh, well, somebody's pretty full of themselves. I bet you Jimmy Walker would have said dynamite for half what Coleman got. This absolutely absurd match had no fewer than 3 run-ins. The first came from the members of the Buffalo Bills football team who were antagonized by Jarrett wearing a rival's jersey. Then Coleman himself got involved, revealing he stuffed a towel under his hat to absorb a Jarrett guitar shot. Then Sting came along and put the final nail in the coffin on Double J for Awesome to pick up the W. Just saying, the win doesn't mean much if a bunch of football players, Sting, and Gary Coleman helped you to get there. Well, Mike's 70s bus had been vandalized by Vampiro and the Insane Clown Posse. Ooh, Mike Mediocre, what a burn. The feud saw Awesome wreck Vampiro in a hardcore match that night, then almost kill Shaggy 2-Dope 1 week later after hitting a powerbomb on the roof of the bus before... Hold up, let me read this line from Wikipedia again. Dope's lithe, supple frame fell tragically to the concrete below. I mean, it's kind of poetic. The blow-off came in a match at Halloween Havoc, which is highlighted by a fan trying to get cute and paying the price, and by Vampiro suffering a huge concussion that put him out of work for some time. Man, the Dark Carnival got the shaft. Maybe WCW was happy that Awesome put an end to the psychopathic clown's run of the company, or maybe it's because Vince Russo had left, but either way, Awesome was given a world title match after winning a battle royal in a Thunder that was literally down under in Australia. The push was short-lived, however, as Awesome was a means to an end, a fall guy between Booker T and Scott Steiner on their road to the Mayhem pay-per-view. Finally, it was time for Mike to shed the last vestiges of Russo's booking influence and be a 70s guy no more. And thank God, too. I'd hate to see what would have happened if WCW stuck around for a couple more years and the higher-ups stumbled upon that 80s show. Awesome was back in business at Starrcade, beating Bam Bam Bigelow in his old favorite, the ambulance match. Gosh, I'm kind of surprised they didn't just call him Dr. Mike or something equally dumb with all these ambulance matches he did. I can hear the catchphrase now. Diagnosis? Awesome! On a December episode of Thunder, Jim Duggan apologized to the fans for being part of Team Canada earlier in the year, as he should have because it was stupid and nobody cared. Hacksaw was cornered in the ring by his former stablemates when Mike Awesome came in to make the save. Psych, he's Canadian now apparently. Never mind why Awesome's joining the team after having feuded with Lance Storm for months and is also not actually Canadian. Or I don't know, maybe it's a throwback to his FMW days. Awesome spent the rest of his WCW run as a member of the group and even got the bus repainted in red and white. Team Canada worked a lengthy feud with the Filthy Animals, including a hair versus hair match after Starrcade. What was originally booked as Awesome vs. Kidman soon turned into Awesome vs. Conan, that wrestler who's famous for his luscious locks. Awesome's glorious mullet was shorn, and with it presumably the last of his powers. At this point, Team Canada's track record was spotty at best. Lance Storm became commissioner but only held the job for less than a week. Elix Skipper became one of the first cruiserweight tag champs with Kid Romeo, but by that point he wasn't really part of the Canadian group. Storm and Awesome appeared on the final Nitro in Panama City Beach, where they lost the tag team champions Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo. So there you go, WCW's finally over and done with. It can't hurt Mike Awesome anymore.
It's Mike Awesome! There's a WCW wrestler in Madison Square Garden!
Okay, well, it took long enough for something cool to happen to him. Awesome's contract was one of the 30 picked up by the WWF during the WCW buyout, and he got off to a hot start becoming the first Invader to win gold by beating Rhino for the Hardcore title, in Madison Square Garden no less. He would then go on to accomplish absolutely nothing after that in the Federation before being released in 2002, then telling anyone who would listen how much he hated the experience of working there. Awesome would make one final return to WWE in 2005 at ECW One Night Stand, warring with his old rival Masato Tanaka in another violent affair that wound up stealing the show. Sadly, that would be one of Awesome's last major wrestling appearances before committing suicide 2 years later. Now, I'm not going to come on here and say that Mike Awesome should have been WCW champion. Awesome was great in a lot of areas, but unfortunately not the ones that counted to be a viable main eventer in larger companies. That being said, and it's a phrase I've said a lot in this channel, but how did WCW fuck this up? Much like when Bret Hart got Montreal screwed on his way out of the World Wrestling Federation, WCW had a gift from the wrestling gods fall into their lap when they signed ECW's world champion away from them. And also like with Bret, the company failed to capitalize on this huge moment and squandered him almost right out the gate. Mike Awesome was only in WCW for 11 months, and in that time he was a career killer, a fat chick thriller, a 70s guy, and an honorary Canadian. That's 4 major gimmick changes in less than 1 year. No one could have survived that much character upheaval. Just start him out as a badass, keep him that way, and the money would have printed itself. You gotta feel for Awesome. The more you hear about his time in WCW from the people who were there, the more the claim of backstage politics is confirmed. Not just alleged heat from Vince Russo, but from other wrestlers who were nervous to work with him because of his in-ring style. In an era where WCW desperately needed fresh faces on top and a more modern and innovative in-ring style, Awesome could have fit that bill perfectly. Instead, his legacy is being one of the more memorable examples of a promising talent done in by the promotion's toxic politics and absurd mismanagement. Based on his success in ECW before skipping town, there's no reason to think a well-booked Mike Awesome in WCW couldn't have done some great business. But you know, gotta make 70s jokes, I guess. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.